Hi, this is Charles Hoskinson broadcasting live from warm, sunny Colorado. Always warm, always sunny, sometimes Colorado. Today is May 17th, 2024. Making a video to talk about our favorite topic. Well, at least one of them, humility. But in what way, Charles? Well, there's an interesting Reddit post. Wah! And it's up here. Concerning Hoskinson and humility, constructive criticism. It is hard to give constructive criticism to a genius, but I believe it is in the best interest of the Cardano community and the future of the protocol to try to help Charles Hoskinson understand the nature and importance and value of humility. First, let's not confuse humility with decency. Charles Hoskinson is a decent person. He is civil and gives credit where credit is due. Also, to be sure, he deserves tremendous credit for his part in formulating, guiding the design and development of the Cardano protocol. But humility is something different. It is the ability to admit that your viewpoints, other than one's own, may have merit, and he continually runs into trouble on this score. He is a mathematical mind, which treats all points of view as having a mathematical logical basis. This leads to the misconception that different points of view are always logically comparable. He then applies his formidable reasoning ability to arrive at the, quote, truth, but things like life, the physical world, and politics are not math. The real world is messy, and often different perspectives lead to different conclusions. For example, to me, having guns in the house means an increased risk of accidental death to someone in my household. That's actually a true statement. To Charles, responsible gun ownership is a right and a symbol of individual freedom. That's also a true statement. These two viewpoints cannot be boiled down to a single logical comparison. They are different ways of perceiving the same physical world. It is incredibly important not to confuse our idea of the world with the way the world actually is. The first involves perception and perspective, then second is impossible to know with certainty. Science and math helps us preference some ideas about the world as being more accurate than others, but still leaves plenty of room for different points of view. Charles Hoskinson is not just some guy with the right to speak his mind. While that is true, he is also the person that people look to in order to understand not just the Cardano protocol, but the points of view that motivate and hold the Cardano community together. It's actually not a true statement, but I appreciate your bit of confidence. But this role demands a greater degree of humility, the understanding that no one, including myself, is exempt from the possibility of misperceived reality. Instead of drawing on humility in order to acknowledge and lay out different points of view for discussion, when Cardano meets with political headwinds from ill-informed policymakers, so this is the crux of it, ill-informed policymakers. It's in response to my video that I made about Biden. Hoskins immediately goes on the offensive. Okay, well, see, that's actually not true, and this is why I'm making this. With logical arguments that seek to prove he is right and they are wrong, this is a problem for the entire Cardano community because it paints the whole project as a bunch of stubborn children who believe they know better. And so instead of seeing the value in Hoskinson's arguments, what others tend to see only as an apparent temper tantrum. No, you see it that way. It works both ways, and we'll talk about it in a second. I don't expect Hoskinson to listen to me, but perhaps he'll at least pay heed to the great American author Samuel Clemens, who once said, "It ain't what you don't know that gets you. It's what you know for sure that just ain't so." So let's talk about this. With respect to the Biden administration, the Democrats that follow that administration, our industry has spent years fair game engaging. Talked to the White House, chairman of the CFTC, commissioners of the SEC, spoke before Congress, dozens of open letters, dozens of policy meetings, private dinners with senators and congressmen. While all of those discussions were happening, you have Operation Choke Point 2.0, where there's a systematic effort to unbank cryptocurrency companies. And then you have Robinhood get a Wells notice, Coinbase get a Wells notice, Uniswap get a Wells notice, Kraken get a Wells notice, Binance get a Wells notice. You notice the trend here, guys? They're not misinformed. When Biden was running for president in 2020, he made a deal with Elizabeth Warren for her to drop out. He would give her control of domestic Treasury policy. So if you look at the people in the Treasury Department and you look at the people running the Treasury agencies, many of them were handpicked by Elizabeth Warren, who is fervently anti-crypto. There's no negotiation. There's no conversation. There's no enlightenment. We've tried as an industry. We've spent years as an industry engaging with these people. in the most humble way possible, talking about things like banking the unbanked, equity, talking about race relations, talking about discrimination and fairness. These are bread and butter issues that matter a lot to rank and file Democrats and the Democrat Party. Talk about housing discrimination, talk about credit discrimination, talked about financial transparency, talked about holding financial institutions accountable, triple entry accounting, talked about so many different things. Talk about cybersecurity in the United States and the necessity of embracing this industry for that purpose. And you know what? Reasonable people, like the 60 senators who voted just recently for a resolution rebuking the SEC, actually do listen. And it's very easy to talk to them. But this administration in particular, because of the deals it's made, has decided to take a position that crypto is fundamentally harmful to the American people. And it has decided that 53 million Americans, regardless of their politics and preferences, are basically soft criminals engaging in illegal activity. A lot of my friends who I've known for many years, longer than most of you have been in this industry, are under scrutiny now. Roger Ver is a friend of mine. He's probably going to go to prison because of a tax issue 10 years after he rescinded his U.S. citizenship. CZ is another friend of mine. He is in prison. And there are others. It's not a game. It's not about can we convince people or be reasonable. The Biden administration is the unreasonable party here. It's made up its mind and it's being duplicitous. They're saying with a smile, we're willing to negotiate. Come in and register. Talk to us. Engage with us. Then in action, there's no way to register. There's no way to engage. And the goal is to offshore the entire industry and say everyone's a criminal and hand the entire industry to the banks like BlackRock and others. That's where we're at. This is not an issue of humility. This is not an issue of humbling oneself. It's not an issue of understanding that there are multiple sides to an issue. This is an issue where the leader of one of the two major political parties in the United States has made a conscious policy decision to go to war with one of the most important industries in the United States. There are many people listening who hate Trump, who are Democrats, who think Trump is a fundamental threat to the United States, and if reelected, will become Turbo Hitler. That's not what we're talking about here. We're talking about 100% the political cost for a politician for being anti-crypto. If you take a polling of young people, the majority of young people in the United States are liberal. The majority of Gen Z, the majority of millennials have more left bend than a right bend. The majority of people in Gen Z and millennials are actually pro-crypto. And when you look at the ownership of cryptocurrencies, the majority is Gen Z and millennials in the United States. For those 53 million people are overwhelmingly pro-crypto. So here's the real harsh political reality. If there are consequences for supporting a policy position, pro-gun, anti-gun, pro-abortion, anti-abortion, pro-Israel, anti-Israel, whatever it might be, and those consequences result in you losing an election, then your successors will moderate their stances. After 4 years of constant engagement, watching good friends go to prison, watching all of the exchanges in our industry, and now the DeFi space gets served with costly $100 million plus lawsuits that they're going to have to run through, regardless if they win or lose, still pay hundreds of millions of dollars. Watching the SEC in some cases actually get rebuked by judges for misconduct, and the Senate rebuked them, and the Congress rebuked them, with this president saying that regardless of what they do, he'll veto it. After watching all these things happen, at what point is it a humility issue versus is it a policy issue that's immutable? If this president loses his job and crypto is the decider, no Democrat running in 2028 will be anti-crypto. That is the fact. Now, who knows who he loses it to? RFK, Trump? That's not what we're talking about here. I speak when I speak about politics, not about social issues, not about gun ownership, not about tax policy, not about real estate, not about geopolitics and whether we should be in Ukraine or not, or what have you. Don't talk about these things. What we talk about from this microphone is about crypto. Because you know what? This is the industry that liberates humanity. And at the end of the day, we have an election coming up where one party has made a decision that crypto should be destroyed in the American system. The United States should shut crypto down. And they're doing it by actions. And if you can't see it, or if you somehow think it was the same under the Trump administration, you're just not paying attention. And your personal political biases are getting in the way of your own objectivity. Because you can take a look at the anti-clarity, the hostility, the volume of lawsuits, the fact that many American businesses are leaving and going abroad. And you can take a look at all of the attempts to try to unify and bring people together on a bipartisan basis have been squashed by an overreaching executive branch. Now, if that branch loses the election because of this policy stance, both parties will understand that the young demand crypto, and to betray that public trust translates to losing elections. Now, I fully admit and agree that this is the most challenging election in my lifetime. You have two presidents running, a former president and a current president, and both of them are very old, very controversial, and both are not fit for office. That's why I endorsed RFK, because the American people deserve something different, anything different. We can't talk about the lesser of two evils anymore. We ought to talk about healing the nation instead of harming the nation. But we are where we're at. The presidential debates are likely going to be at the end of June. I think they agreed June 27th. There's a strong possibility that Trump's trial will come to a conclusion the week before. He may be actually a convicted felon and in a prison cell doing the debate. Where I was growing up, political opponents, if they're arrested during elections, typically what Russia does and China does and banana republics do. But that's just where we're at as a nation. That's just where we're at. And it's not a comfortable situation. Everybody's angry. Everybody is saying incredibly divisive things. People are overstating positions. We lived through 4 years of the Trump administration. The United States didn't die. Now we're almost through 4 years of the Biden administration. The United States has yet to die. Both administrations have done harm to the United States, both in terms of the national debt, our foreign policy, safety, and security, as well as the overall prosperity of the American people. These are just facts. These are just objective realities. And we, the American people, deserve better leadership. We deserve better systems. At a time when all of us have to cut the budget, tighten our belts, we shouldn't allow the government to propose a $7.3 trillion budget, where every administrative agency increases its budget year after year, as opposed to trying to live within its means. We shouldn't finance all this adventurism. Yet both candidates will continue doing this if they win. So I don't have much choice about it. I can vote for RFK, and I will. Donated money to him, and we'll fight. We'll see what happens. But if Trump or Biden wins, as a cryptocurrency entrepreneur who employs almost 1,000 people around the world, who lives in the United States of America and wants to create jobs in the United States of America, I have to ask what's best for my industry. Under the Trump administration, we founded and built Cardano. Under the Biden administration, the entire industry is at war with the US government. That's the difference. So, obviously, I have preferences here, and I would rather not see a second Biden administration unless and until he reverses the policies that have been so disastrous for us. But he won't do so because he doesn't think there's a political cost or consequence to it. So the point is, if we create a political cost and consequence in that he loses one of his core bases that he needs to win re-election, he'll realize he has to moderate his stance. He'll realize that bipartisan legislation helping create regulatory clarity for the cryptocurrency industry is necessary, and he needs to be part of getting that done so we can return to normalcy and get back to the business of building the future. And he'll realize that his positions are costing the United States of America trillions of dollars. Now, you can say these things with humility, and we have as an industry for years and continue to do so. An open letter just got submitted to Speaker Johnson and Minority Leader Jeffries outlining a House resolution specifically for legislation specifically to create a comprehensive legislative framework for the cryptocurrency industry. 60 companies from Circle to Coinbase and everybody in between were signers of that open letter in support of common sense legislation. So that's the humility component. Good people wake up every day making the case, showing the numbers, educating people, fighting for it. The non-humility component is, despite all of that, to say that every transaction in crypto is basically Hamas being funded, which was implied by Elizabeth Warren, to say disingenuous things like come in and register when there's no path or clarity to do so, and whenever clarity is created, to take it away from the industry, like Ethereum being a security and then not a security. It's anti-clarity. That is the lack of humility. And the people who support that, I understand maybe you're willing to excuse that behavior because you think there are other policy positions in this election that are more important. But as a cryptocurrency entrepreneur who believes that this technology is the single most important technology to liberate humanity from the chains that we are currently in and protect us from the global governance that's being inflicted upon us, I'm a one-issue voter. I don't think the U.S. government anymore is going to solve our problems. I just don't think they're capable of doing so. The best case scenario is they stay out of our way as citizens as we solve them ourselves. Our industry was born on those libertarian principles. We'll go our own way, we'll make our own money, we'll be our own bank, and we will succeed together. And every single person is here not because they have a gun to their head or they were forced to be here, but they're here because they chose to be here and because they believe that we together can build a better world. That's what we did. And all we asked the government wasn't for money, subsidies. We just said, get out of our way and let us as an industry do what we need to do so we can build something that has integrity for once. And instead, what they've done is not only get in our way, but say that 53 million Americans who believe in this are criminals. And they should just shut up, get in the corner, and turn the keys over to somebody else, the very people that we were trying to get rid of to begin with. That's perhaps the greatest robbery that America has ever committed, even beyond the COVID issues, where trillions of dollars were transferred from the poor to the rich. That's a robbery of all of our collective futures and what remains of our dignity and liberty as people. That's what this election functionally means. Whether Trump gets in or not, or someone else, we're so divisive, the U.S. government is going to grind to a halt. The big difference will be, will the executive branch continue to be weaponized against the cryptocurrency industry? Or will it lighten up a bit to give us the critical time that we need to take 53 million Americans and turn it into 200 million Americans? And the next generation of congressmen and senators and presidents will be crypto natives. And it'll be antithetical to turn off this technology, just like each and every one of you listening today would think it's impossible for the U.S. government to pass a law to get rid of the internet and exile it from the United States. But there was a time in the early 90s where these debates were being held with the NSFAUP and other such things, because the people running the show back then didn't understand or care or think there were political consequences to attacking a network like this. We today have, it's so deeply ingrained in our lives, we can't imagine a life without it. That is the task of this industry. And all we need is time and people to get off our back. So in 2024, all I ask is vote crypto. That's it. If it's a pro-crypto candidate, doesn't matter if they're a Democrat or a Republican or an independent, just vote for them. And if they're anti-crypto, vote against them. and make it be known that what you care about is a better future for America. Make it be known that what you care about is money with integrity. Make it be known that what you care about is owning your own data and your own identity, to actually have your own wallet. And you just want the government out of the system that we built to get them out. Then, if enough of you do that and the consequences are great enough, every single politician will hear you loud and clear. And guess what will happen? They will get off your back because they understand the consequences of being on it. If that's not humility, well, you know what? I'm sorry, but somebody has to have the courage to say it. Somebody has to have the courage to fight for it. Believe me, this is not easy. It's not to my benefit. It puts a target on my back. It harms me, professionally and personally. But some things in life are worth fighting for. And I've gotten old enough, and I've lived enough life, and I've been to enough places to see a world without freedom and a world with it. And always, regardless of the personal and professional consequences of speaking out and telling people your mind, you should never be afraid to fight for liberty and never be afraid to fight for freedom. That's what we're doing here. And we do it in our own way, with code, with protocols, with a community. So come 2024, vote crypto. That's all I ask. Thank you so much.